name is Stuart K. Hayashi, and my YouTube username is Legendre007. But if you're watching this right now, it was probably uploaded on a different account by my friend Tali Satele. Thank you very much, Tali. And I want to talk with all of you about something I call invisible gun. And I want to talk about the law. I want us to think about what the law really is. What does it mean? Whenever something in society is troubling people, their immediate reaction is, there ought to be a law about this. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean, to pass a law doesn't just mean that there is some behavior that we all disapprove of, and it doesn't just mean we're telling the perpetrator we don't like his behavior and want him to stop. The repercussions of enforcing the law are much more serious than that. Okay, suppose that there's a man named Murray, and he gets slapped with a traffic citation, and he's charged a very small fine. Well, that's no big deal, right? But suppose, for argument's sake, that he doesn't pay the fine. He laughs it off. Well, eventually he'll be slapped with more fines, bigger fines. Suppose he doesn't pay any of them either. Eventually, if he goes on for too long like this, the government will have to send armed policemen after him and subpoena him to show up in court. Well, what if he doesn't show up in court? Then the government will have to send armed policemen after him. And suppose that when he sees them, he tries to run from them. And if he keeps running, they'll eventually they might have to tackle him and clobber him. If he still struggles and fights back like Rodney King, police might have to use physical battery on him, or use nightsticks, or mace, or a taser. And according to Amnesty International, some people Americans have actually been killed by taser guns in the past few years. And if this man still somehow manages to fight back, and he's very vigorous and very dangerous to the police handling him, they might have to resort to shooting him with a gun. So the more someone resists following the law and resists arrest and puts up a big fight, a dangerous fight against those trying to arrest him, the more force will have to be used. The final punishment for all of that in the long run is death. This is something that was pointed out to me by someone named Ken Scholand. He's the author of the text for a flash animation very popular on YouTube called The Philosophy of Liberty. And the point about escalating crimes and punishment appears in this book called The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, a free Market Odyssey by Ken Scholand. I don't know if you can see it. And there's a little blurb on the front by the Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman. I highly recommend it. So yes, in the end, laws are ultimately enforced at gunpoint. In the long run, laws are backed by violence. And that actually doesn't have to always be bad. I mean, if some criminal or a terrorist or a foreign dictator is trying to murder people or rape people or violently beating up people who haven't done anything to anyone, innocent people, they are the ones initiating violence. They have started violence against innocent people. So when we pass laws against that, and we send government agents to stop them, we are just employing retaliatory force against the force the crook or terrorist started. So we need laws like that. We also need laws against theft. I mean, if some bandit points a gun at you and says your money or your life, clearly he's threatening violence against you if you don't comply with his orders. And also, maybe if you're a farmer and you're farming your own crops, if some crooks always stole your crops and stole your money and you couldn't eat, that would kill you. So we need to protect people from theft. We also need to protect your private property rights. Vandalism, property damage, that can hurt you too. We need to stop that. So we need laws against property damage and theft. Also, we need laws that enforce contracts. Suppose that we made a contract saying that you would pay me money and then I would provide you with a certain service. And then you pay me and then I don't provide you with that service. Well, that is theft. So to protect your private property, we need laws against contract breach. And if I made a contract with you and I had already decided beforehand while making the contract that I wouldn't honor my side of the bargain, that would be a premeditated breach of contract. And that's exactly what fraud is. So we need laws against breach of contract, property damage, rape, murder, theft, fraud, vandalism, those things. Those are all forms of what I call spoliation. They threaten your rights to life and private property. But what happens when the government tries to pass laws that regulate what consenting adults peacefully do with each other with their own private property? I mean, suppose some entrepreneur charges low prices for his products, and his competitors don't like that and say that's unfair, and they want to pass antitrust laws against him to stop him. Is that really a wise use of the law? Because remember, is that really a wise use of the law? I think that whenever we say there ought to be a law, we should ask ourselves, is this so important that it's worth threatening violence over? And when I say this to people, I mean really look at it. If I think that suppose that a gangster pointed a gun at this entrepreneur I spoke of earlier and said, if you don't charge higher prices, then I'm going to point this gun at you and threaten to shoot you if you don't walk into this confined low room, which I will lock you in for a year or longer. We would say that this crook has abducted you. Well, by the same token, what if the government sends armed policemen to make that same threat? Stop practicing business the way you're doing it now, or we will have men point guns at you and threaten to shoot you if you don't walk into this room, which we will lock you in for a year or longer. I would say that this is the government kidnapping an innocent person. And I think that many forms of compulsory taxation, like the income tax, are really the ransom, a preemptive ransom you pay to the government so that it will not abduct you. And when I say things like this, people often are annoyed. They say, oh, for you to say this, you must be a right-wing crackpot or a traitor against America. All those good things. So I think to clarify this discussion, I should use a little metaphor. When the philosopher Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, he talked about how an entrepreneur who makes private contracts with other consenting adults for his own profit will often, in seeking his own self-interest, benefit his customers and his employees. And this benefit is what Adam Smith called the invisible hand. And what I like about it is that it's strictly consensual, it's peaceful. But now there's another phenomenon going on. When the government passes regulations over what consenting adults can do with each other peaceably, with their own private property, without hurting the life or property of third parties, the government is overstepping its bounds often. I call this the invisible hand gun, or just invisible gun. It's a gun because it's backed by violence. But it's invisible because people don't seem to see that it is violent. The violence is apparently hidden under a veil of political rhetoric. And I would like to change that. I think we should recognize what the law is really about. So once again, the next time someone says, there ought to be a law about this, we should ask ourselves, is this so important that it's worth threatening violence over? In many cases, I would say no, it's not important enough. We don't need more government. We need more freedom. Thank you very much.